So I figure this is as good a time as any to give you some background on my path and where I come from, how I got to where I'm at, and the methods that I use today. So I started out as a good Christian boy, and I deconverted in the nerdiest way possible. I grew up in a church where the King James Bible was the only acceptable translation to use. And I decided to delve into, okay, is there any actually valid reason for that? Uh, and is there any reason, as I was told, to think that some of these other Bible translations were satanic because of some of the decisions they made, like using morning star to describe Christ, which was also a term for Lucifer? And the long and short of it is that destroyed my faith pretty quickly because I learned that, hey, the way that I've been taught to read the Bible is probably the stupidest way to read it. Namely, I was taught that it's 100% literal and it's inerrant, which those two obviously don't go together. And to this day, I don't understand exactly what they mean by I am supposed to read poetry literally. And also, if it's meant to be taken 100% literally and it is inerrant, well, Christ lied because he said that he'd be back in his apostles' lifetime. Unless we got one of the saints sitting perfectly pristine in a cave somewhere, that turned out to be false. So from that point onward, I experimented with a bunch of different labels. I was a deist for a while. I read the Satanic Bible because what teenager doesn't when they look at leaving the church. I got into New Age literature, which was definitely a mistake looking back. I can't complain too much. It did have a hand in shaping me. I got comfortable as an armchair occultist, meaning that I still had a great interest in mythology and history and occult symbolism. I didn't realize it because it took me quite a while to actually read Jung, but I was engaging with things in a more archetypal way instead of treating them as literal energies or beings or things. My perspective started to shift about the mid 2010s. I never I've never joined a coven or a formal order, but I was initiated by the spirits into magic. And that completely destroyed and rebuilt my worldview from the ground up. Now, from the time I was an armchair occultist through the beginning of my magical practice, I was much more strongly left hand path leaning than I was anything else. And now these days, I wouldn't identify as left hand path. But if you forced me to pick left or right hand path, I would still pick left hand path. Largely on the basis that I think the right hand path is stupid and isn't a valid path at all. Because as up in the air as the general definitions of these things may be, and I understand that they have proper definitions, but in terms of how the average person understands them, the only consistent thing that I found in the definition of right hand path is essentially submission. Submission to some kind of higher power, submission to God. And that's something that I reject in its totality. I don't think that that is a valid path, period. I think that even though we are meant to show reverence to the gods, and in many cases it would be arrogant for humanity to put themselves on the same level as the gods, we should still be approaching them as agents in our own right, not as perpetual children who are always submitting to an invisible sky parent. The way that I view paganism in its ancient forms is as the left-hand path grown up. And that's not an insult toward the left-hand path, because there's a lot of richness to it. When we're talking about left hand versus right hand path, I think that someone is more likely to find their way to full self actualization following the left hand path than the right hand path. Because even though it has a lot of trappings that are easy to fall into, while it focuses on the darker side of things, it doesn't reject the light. Whereas the right hand path tends to be blinded by the light. And people on the right hand path are a lot more likely to reject darkness in its totality while convincing themselves that they are doing shadow work and that they're integrating these things within themselves, when the reality is that they are just rejecting entire aspects of themselves. See, I don't look at darkness as the absence of light. I look at light and darkness as forces unto themselves and polarities that we embody within us, that we need to embrace and balance and use each polarity where it's appropriate and balance each polarity according to what is appropriate, according to our true will and the situation we find ourselves in. So the way that I would describe myself today is as a Luciferian pagan. And I know that there's a lot of people who still lose their minds at the mention of the name Lucifer. But my understanding of him is that he's not the Christian devil. He is an ancient god that was demonized. Just an example, one of his earlier iterations was Phosphorus. And think very carefully about what the implications of that are. Because what Lucifer ultimately represents is the form of light that emerges within the self when you go into the deepest depths of darkness and you learn who you really are. Phosphorus isn't just a name for a god, but also an element that is essential to life. So that means there's a little bit of phosphorus within all of us, which means there's a little bit of that light within all of us, just waiting for us to tap into it, realize it, and embody it. This is the thing that is most reflective of my view of Lucifer currently, and in my time working with him, because I'll say outright, he's my patron. And he is the one who initiated me into witchcraft, and that was a wild ride. I was drawn to a video recording of his N, and I saw gateways open over all 7 chakras, and I felt energy surging through me. I've never had a vision like that before that instance. Now, in terms of how I practice, I don't stick to any particular pantheon. I work with spirits individually, and I look up information on how people have worked with these spirits individually. And over time, I have created a pretty eclectic personal pantheon. As you can tell from the statues behind me, they're a little bit hard to see, especially Anubis over here. That's him holding the scales. And Ganesh, who is not my patron, but I don't know what it is, but I love that guy. I have more Ganesh merchandise than I have for any other spirit, and I want more. He's got a very fun energy to him, and I always feel so uplifted and capable after spending a bit of time with him, even if it's just in communion during like a 10-minute meditation. In terms of how I work these days, I don't use many ritual methods. Because see, when it comes to my healing work, I started as a magician. I thought Reiki was nothing but New Age psychosis for a very long time, until some people that I respected were advertising themselves as Reiki practitioners. And that caused me to take it seriously and to look into getting those attunements myself and learning how to do it. And what I found when I got into it is that this is basically an entire magic system. And even though it's focused on healing, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from using it for anything that you want to put it toward. So when you follow from the logic of Reiki and how it's essentially astral magic, and you're attuned to energies, which the way attunements work, the way the Reiki attunements work is that you can already tap into Reiki energy. You don't need anyone's help or permission to do it. It's just going to be difficult for you if you've never done any kind of energy work or meditation prior to attempting it. What the attunements do is it's like tuning a radio. It's like putting presets on your dashboard, where if you want to call in the Reiki energy and channel it through your hands, you hit 1 on the dashboard. So working with spirits and performing different rites, you can do a lot of it the same way. And somewhat similar to Reiki, like we're all tapped into Reiki energies. It's going to be difficult for you to get very far if you don't get attuned to those energies. But if you're persistent about it, if you decide, I'm not going to get Reiki attunements, but every single day for the next year or two, I'm going to make a point of calling in Reiki energies and channeling whatever I can. After those 2 years, you'd be just like somebody who got the Reiki attunements. And it probably happened faster than that. But you can never put a solid time frame on these things. So when channeling the energy of spirits or the different gifts that they give you, it works very much the same way. So if you were to take a spirit and you were to do a set of chants or rites with that spirit on a regular basis, repeating it over the course of 6 months to a year, you would hit a point where you just think the name of that spirit and suddenly you feel their presence surrounding you, or you feel their energy flowing through you. What an attunement to a spirit can do is rearrange your energetic field to a point where it's similar to Reiki. You just think the spirit's name and now you can feel them around you. You won't necessarily have full-blown communication with them, but you'll have a very easy time establishing a working relationship if you choose to. And in the case of, like, okay, I have an attunement called the Gift of Erebus. And it's priced what it is specifically because it is so intense that it's not for the faint of heart. You should only go into that if you're committed. That is a gift that comes from Erebus. And it gives you a direct channel to his energy, but it doesn't necessitate that you establish a working relationship with Erebus. And it doesn't give you as direct of a connection to him as a spirit attunement would. Now, I'm going to make more videos and write a page on my website about attunements. But that's an overview of how I operate these days. I will still use chants. I will still use sigils where it feels right, where it feels comfortable, where I just enjoy working that way. But as with any form of magic, as with any form of healing, right, what happens is the longer that you keep at it and the more that you expand your energetic field, the more you begin to embody it. And that's what I aim for. When I'm doing a lot of ritual, what I'm aiming for is the time where I don't need to do the ritual at all. And to be frank about it, I don't think that the ritual is actually required in the first place. I just think that for me, when it comes to certain things, and for most people, when it comes to where they're at, what the ritual does is it provides the liminal space where you can get past your psychological limitations. You can put yourself in a place where what I'm doing right now is not normal. It is beyond normal. And that allows you to let go and let the subconscious work and build up that charge within your nervous system, because that's the way that magic works. That's the way that any kind of energetic channeling works. The nervous system is a key component of it. So what happens is you build up that charge within the nervous system, or you build up that channel through the nervous system, and the energy flows outward to cause changes both in the spiritual side of the world, in the energetic field of the people that you're working with or working on, and within the material world itself. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. questions are welcome in the comments. And of course, any questions you have for me, if you reach out on the contact form. I look forward to seeing you guys next time.